Pearse Stanley. Vir tash de levada dunangal kun vehin sho.
Vin train mal in you can call you. Gormaigat a Hanishugas. Fwy the realtas ta price utihi ig medu da sharp and gate a hanik mid inye labianian was agus er fod in stationish the man price tihi kirichet €1,000,000 doganye at the geri chat ur a chanart. Yesterday, the CSO reported that in the past year, house prices have continued to skyrocket, rising by more than 7%. Since this government took office, the average house price in Carrigaline, in your own constituency, Taoiseach, has increased by almost €100,000. Nearly half the houses in Carrigaline are now being sold for more than €400,000. And under this government, homes are becoming less affordable. And this has been seen right across the state in every county and in every community. And yet your government crows about that its housing plan is working and claims that you've turned a corner. Yet across the state, first-time buyers are now facing an average price of €400,000 to buy a new build home. So on what planet, Taoiseach, is this affordable for ordinary workers and families? And I hope you answer that question. The rate of home ownership has fallen to its lowest level in 50 years under your government. Homelessness is rising and house prices are surging out of control. And the numbers simply don't lie. Under your government, the housing crisis is getting worse, not better. The number of new homes coming onto the market for people to buy and own fell last year and has flatlined under your government. Investment companies and vulture funds, they're hoovering up properties to rent out at extortionate prices, but that is not a solution to your housing crisis, Taoiseach. And even those who are profiting on the back of people's misery are telling everyone that the government's housing plan is not going to make homes more affordable. Yesterday, one of our biggest trade unions in this state warned that the housing crisis and affordability crisis is now threatening our public services, with teachers, with nurses and Gardaí unable to find an affordable accommodation in cities and towns and villages right across the state. Businesses are telling us, and I'm sure they're telling you, that your housing crisis is undermining our economy. And employers are telling us that they're finding it difficult to attract and retain staff. And this is happening all around you, Taoiseach. Yet your government have the cheek to say that your housing plan is working, that things are getting better, and despite the reality that is facing you blatantly in the face. Now, you created this housing crisis. Your party created this housing crisis, and under Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, it is getting worse. And what are you delivering? Your affordable housing targets are pitiably low, and you're not even meeting those targets, with too many of the properties that are being delivered simply too expensive. Your housing policy is designed to push up prices, and that is exactly what it is doing. And who are the losers in all of this, Taoiseach? It is the ordinary people. It is the ordinary people of Ireland who's losing out under Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil's disastrous housing policies as house prices continue to spiral out of control. It is the young people who are forced to live with their parents into their 30s, putting their lives on hold. Or worse, those who are faced to immigrate because they see no future here in this land. Or it is the families that are trapped into rip-off rental market who don't have any hope of owning their own home. So that's why we need a change of government. That's why we need a change of housing policy that would see the state start to deliver tens of thousands of homes that working people can actually afford. So I'm going to ask you a very simple question, Taoiseach, and it's one that commitment you personally gave. We're now over 4 years since the general election. You personally gave a commitment to the electorate that if elected, you would deliver 50,000 affordable homes to purchase at prices less than €250,000. My question, Taoiseach, and I'm sure many people are scratching their heads asking the same question, where are those homes today? Because the result of your policy is that you have driven house prices out of control and out of reach of ordinary families. What do you say to people in your own constituency where they are now being asked to fork out €400,000 plus to buy a new build in your own constituency and right across the state?
Taoiseach, please.
Well, I do spire an team election and tachta. Agus níl áras ormsa ach an strategic housing for all. Levad níos fearr ná aon rud atá fáilte a go hain nuaig a party Sinn Féin. Agus níl áras ná mar rud a gur sibse sa rialtas beag an scéal levad níos mesa agus beag praisna a bhad níos arda. Go háirir de daoine tá cinna teach ag géad óir. Just have to say, Deputy, that I disagree fundamentally with your narrative and your approach. building houses is key. And Fianna Fáil did take up the housing portfolio, deliberately did at the start of this government, because historically Fianna Fáil has built houses. To the various decades and generations of this country since its history, Fianna Fáil built houses. And if you look at the commencement notices, Deputy, in terms of what's happening right now, extraordinary figures in the first 4 months of this year. 18,000 new homes were commenced in April of 2024. That's about 600% over last year, highest seen in any month since series began in 2014. And in the first 4 months of 2024, there were over 30,000 houses commenced. That's hugely above last year's figures. And again, if you take the last 12 months, from May 23 to April 24, there's been about 53,000 homes commenced. There is momentum in terms of house construction in this country. And the reason, and look, and then we're trying to create sustainability into the future through the Future Ireland Fund, which you voted against yesterday. And in the infrastructure fund, as part of that, we want to build in capital reserves so that we can keep building houses at a sustainable rate into the future. Now, you told Davy stockbrokers that you would support the Future Ireland Fund, and you voted against it in the Dáil yesterday. And it's the classic, you're Dr. Jekyll to Davy stockbrokers, but you're Mr. Hyde when it comes into the Dáil. And I know which personality I believe in. But I would ask, what should the Irish people believe when it relates to Sinn Féin and housing policy? Because you talked about prices increasing. And I don't like house prices increasing at the rate that they're doing. And the rate has come down, but not enough. And the key to it is supply. The key to it is supply. The key to it is supply. But Deputy, you have said you would remove the Help to Buy scheme. You voted against the First Home scheme. You voted against the capital refurbishment grants in terms of vacancy and in terms of dereliction. Now, the net outcome of that, Deputy, in terms of your policies would be a substantial and significant increase for the price of houses for first-time buyers. And there's 450 now a week buying their houses for the first time. And your policies would take away the supports that we've put in place for first-time buyers that enables them to buy houses at unprecedented rates. At the unprecedented rates in the last number of years, the number of first-time buyers is increasing because of this government's policies and the policies over the last 4 years across the Help to Buy scheme, across other initiatives, First Home scheme, and also the various affordable schemes. And then on the social housing front, you have to acknowledge, Deputy, that there's been very significant increases both in new builds, 8,800 last year, but also in delivery of social homes up to about 1,200.
You're usurping the role of the leader. Will you allow the Taoiseach to answer, please?
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the leadership ambitions of Deputy O'Brien, and that's clear. But the point is that, in a more serious vein, we're talking about pricing and affordability. The Sinn Féin policies would undermine the capacity of first-time buyers to buy homes at an affordable price, because you would get rid of all the underpinning supports that we've put in place. And with the LDA as well, through Project Tussie and others, we're moving very fast to get affordable houses on the road.
You stood there and said the rate of increase in house prices is coming down. Open your eyes, it's accelerating. It's increasing month on month. We've had 10 months of house prices. In your own constituency, house prices are now 100,000 more than when you took office just 4 years ago. And you try to lecture us who's in opposition. You couldn't make this up. Home ownership is at the lowest level in 50 years under your government. You have the Minister for Housing. I asked you a simple question. You made a personal promise. You made a commitment to the electorate. You said if you got into government, you would deliver 50,000 affordable houses at prices that would be less than €250,000. I ask you, where are they? Because nobody can find them anywhere. They're not in Cork, they're not in Donegal, they're not in Dublin. You haven't delivered the houses. And your policies are pushing up house prices. And how do we know? How do we know? The CSO are telling us you're locking out an entire generation from home ownership. You're locking people into sky-high rent. And yes, the vulture funds and investors are sweeping up those houses and they are renting them out at astronomical prices, and that is government policy. So I ask you a simple question again. Shake your head all you want. Where are the 50,000 affordable houses that you promised to deliver at cost less than €250,000? Please answer that question, Mayor.
Thank you, Deputy.
Deputy, it's noticeable from your reply that you avoided any response to the fundamental problem through the Chair, through the Concorder's.
Please, now.
550 first-time buyers each week are now buying their first home. Mortgage drawdowns by first-time buyers reached a new peak at almost 26,000 in 2023. That's the highest annual level since 2007. And listening to you, Deputy, one would be forgiven for thinking that none of that is happening. And what has been important in that has been the expanded Help to Buy scheme of €30,000 to support home ownership. Over 45,000 first-time buyers have benefited. And you want to take that support away from those who want to buy their first home. The first home scheme, the new equity, the shared equity, you opposed that, Deputy. And you also opposed the capital, or the grants for the vacancies and so on. Housing supply is growing, and very significantly. And I think it's very interesting that when I endeavoured to respond to the Deputy, I didn't interrupt the Deputy once, but I've known from the Deputy that, you know, most people like a bit of melody, but with Deputy Pearse Doherty, it's cacophony all the way, and it's shouting, roaring, noise, as if the decibel levels reveals your sort of the rightness of your...
Sit down, Deputy, please. Sit down, Deputy. Deputy, do you want me to suspend the House? Deputy Doherty, do you want me to suspend the House? Well, I'll tell you now. Wait, no, let the chair speak. I know we're at a certain point in the electoral cycle where people are getting excited. I know hostages have been given to fortune, but they've been given on by lots of different people on lots of different sides. The public are looking at this and they expect the debate here to be conducted in an orderly. They expect the debate to be conducted. Strategic interruption and heckling is no way to conduct an orderly debate. You, sir, are the arch-strategic. You know very well what you're doing. You know very well what you're doing, and you're strategically heckling constantly. The next time this occurs, I'm going to suspend the House. Now, can we? You know, you can't make a point of order. Resume your seat. Resume your seat. Resume your seat. If you persist, I will put the House into recess. Now, can we hear Deputy Aodhan without interruption, please?
I'm not sure if you saw the Fine Gael video posted online yesterday about their 15 ways to help business. Well, I saw it. I watch little else these days. The Minister for Public Expenditure starts speaking at point 12, and he writes sick pay on a flip chart, and then goes on to say, we're going to pause further changes in this area and ask the ESRI to evaluate the impact of any further policy decisions. He didn't have the courage to say the words sick pay out loud in the video. But we all know what the plan is. It's been floated out by Fine Gael since Simon Harris took over as Taoiseach and leader. Well, yesterday it was confirmed as government policy that any further increase in the current 5 days of statutory paid sick leave would be blocked. A clear signal was given to business. This won't go ahead. And it comes at the same time as a no-strings-attached multi-million euro bailout package for business was announced. No requirement to engage in collective bargaining or the industrial relations machinery of the state. Support for the sectors with the highest level of low-paid workers. At the same time, your plan is to restrict any improvement in the rights for these workers. And let that sink in. In order to help business, the plan is to cut future sick leave entitlement for workers and slow down future increases in the minimum wage. Now, what message did that send to workers? What happened to the pandemic dividend? Now, Labour introduced our sick pay bill in 2020 because it was a vital part of our response to COVID, and Ireland was an outlier in the EU. In Belgium, you get 30 days at full pay. In Germany, 6 weeks at full pay. So it's important we bust some myths about Ireland's sick pay law. Employers in Ireland already pay one of the lowest social insurance rates in Europe, and the package announced yesterday will cut it further. You must be certified as sick by a GP or unable to work. Workers were told this would be phased in. And remember, this is not full pay. Under the law, you get 70% of your normal weekly pay, up to a maximum of €110 a day. So who does statutory sick pay benefit? It helps those in precarious, insecure and low-paid work, predominantly young people, migrants, women, because better-paid workers are more likely to be unionised or have fully paid sick leave in their contracts. The cost of living crisis hasn't gone away. Incomes are still squeezed by rising prices. So, Taoiseach, here's my question for you. If you are sick, should you go to work? If you're too sick, should you get sick pay?
I think this government actually has been supporting workers and we have a very strong record on strengthening and introducing workers' rights. In January 2023, we introduced statutory sick pay entitlement for all workers, providing a crucial safety net to protect workers who became ill, and it again underscores our commitment to the welfare and well-being of our workforce. And from January the 1st of this year, the number of statutory sick leave days increased from 3 to 5. And then, of course, as you know, in February of last year, we introduced a new permanent public holiday, St. Bridget's Day, and that brings the number of public holidays in Ireland to 10. And then we have the Work-Life Balance and Miscellaneous Provisions Act of April 23, which provides employees the right to request a remote working arrangement with their employer, recognising changing dynamics, the modern workplace. And then we have the European Union Transparent Predictable Working Conditions Regulations, the Payment of Wages, Tips and Gratuities Act of 2022. And furthermore, as you know, we're also developing the auto-enrolment initiative, which will benefit hundreds of thousands of workers who don't have adequate pension cover. We have introduced the concept of the living wage and the correlation between minimum wage, or the convergence, of the minimum wage with the living wage, which has been quite significant, as evidenced by the increase in the minimum wage last year. Now, there are many, many workers across the country who work in small businesses and who work in the retail and hospitality sector. Also, I'm sure, Deputy, you've been inundated with representations from people working in shops, restaurants and so on, who are saying to the government and to the Oireachtas, cumulatively this has had an impact on small businesses as they emerge from COVID. So I do think it's legitimate that we introduce measures to try and help the hospitality and retail sector. And they've focused on the ICOB scheme, as we call it, the contribution to businesses, being again reopened with opportunities for those who receive the first grant of a minimum of 5,000, for that they could receive a second grant. And that's the fundamental change. And also in raising the PRSRI eligibility threshold, in terms of making sure that with the increase in the minimum wage, that the PRSI rate would not increase for many small employers. Those are the sort of fundamental improvements that will help in the short term for people and businesses. And then reviewing other mechanisms or other issues, and I think it's legitimate to at least review to see what, because if you look at our economy, overall we have a record 2.7 million people at work. In the last year alone we added 90,000 jobs over that past year, 550,000 jobs since this government took office.
Thank you. The time is up, please.
The point being, there's a balance needs to be struck here in terms of enabling people to have the most fundamental opportunity of all, which is the opportunity to work.
I don't know what question you were answering, but you weren't answering my question. Because In the Fine Gael video, they didn't have the courage to actually say the word sick pay out loud. And you didn't say the word sick pay out loud either in your answer to me. Now, the difference between you, me, and a low-paid worker, Taoiseach, if we come to work, or if we're too sick to come to work, we'll get paid anyway. But if you're a low-paid worker in insecure work, in a low-paid job, as I said, predominantly young people, migrants, women, you are unlikely to get paid if you're sick. So why should these vulnerable workers have that right paused?
Sick leave. You said sick leave. You didn't address the question of the stalling of sick pay. Government promise.
It's the next phase.
It's the next phase.
The next phase. It's a substantial issue that I'm raising. You didn't
So we
answer the
haven't
substantial
we
issue.
haven't, there hasn't been a decision in relation to the next
Fine Gael
phase.
made a decision.
But there is a review. That's not a decision, Deputy. And so let's be very clear.
Donoghue about it.
And I think there is an issue. What I'm saying is, if you're, look, the most fundamental thing in our employment or in our economy is that we create employment opportunities, because most people want to be at work. And it's very clear, and you did nod in affirmation, that the hospitality sector have been onto you and the retail sector. And the first people to lose out, if costs become unsustainable, are those very vulnerable and no-paid workers you were talking about. Because it will mean less people being hired. I mean, of all the insolvencies this year, quite a significant percentage have come from the hospitality and retail sector. And therefore there is a need to target and to endeavour to understand what has led to that. And there could be different factors, I acknowledge. And so I do think there's a need to absorb that and to endeavour to respond to it, which we have, in fairness, in the number of supports we're giving to businesses, particularly smaller businesses.
Deputy Peter Fitzpatrick, please.
Thank you very much for getting called out. Taoiseach, special needs citizens are being denied equal provision of health and safety leave while pregnant. They are given just 21 days leave if they are deemed to be at risk in the working environment. This means SNAs have to use other leave to compensate for long-term absence if they encounter risk during early stages of pregnancy. Contagious diseases are more common in younger children, which are considered a threat to babies' health. Considering the potential risk posed to SNAs, where there is a greater risk of injury given the physical element and role of the direct proximity, this is demonstrated to a clear disparity between provisions afforded to teachers and SNAs. It could be legitimately argued that the category of workers who may need to rely on health and safety leave to a greater extent. According to Pearse, the union says that any policy in this regard should be indiscriminated and the provision should be afforded equally to all pregnant staff, not based on grade or roles. Taoiseach, will you consider making equal workplace safety standards across all boards, if not greater? We need to ensure that the government must put supports in place for employees to assist them to complement leave and better support expectant employees. SNAs work with children with a range of care, many with extremely challenging behaviour that makes require a full-time help to SNAs. Teachers, I'd be the first to say a lot of good work has been done in education. You've got more teachers, you've got more SNAs, early intervention, children are diagnosed early with the problems. I had a young girl, a young mother, expecting her first child, came to me a couple of weeks ago there, and she's been on a job for a couple of years. She absolutely loves her job. She's been bitten, she's been kicked, she's been thumped, but she loves her job. All of a sudden, she was viciously attacked there a couple of weeks ago, and she's off work, and now she has to take her own, pay for herself. To me, teachers, this is very, very unfair. And I said, this, to me, an SNA and a teacher, they have vocations, and the both should be treated the same. So, what I'm trying to say to you, to Taoiseach, is the conditions must be improved, and it's in your power to look after these SNAs. And I do believe that they do deserve better treatment. As a former teacher, yourself teacher, you know, and over the last number of years, a lot of SNAs, they've got a lot of equal opportunities as teachers. Like if you go back to the employment permit bill back in 2022, it was to do with domestic violence. A lot of teachers and SNAs were getting domestic violence, and now that's been looked after there, Taoiseach. Also with the breastfeeding as well, like teachers and SNAs are getting the same. But I'm trying to say to you, Taoiseach, the amount of good work is being done by SNAs. And I will be honest here, half the schools in the country hasn't got enough SNAs. And it's important that we try to get the right people to go into these here. People have gone back to school, they've got themselves educated and got themselves, got the experience and got everything they need to be an SNA. And as I said, the amount of work, the amount of people coming to my constituency office that's children autistic and everything else, they want to know when their kids go to school, they're getting full-time care and they're being looked after properly by SNAs. So I'm just asking you, will you please, will you please look after the SNAs?
Thank you, Deputy, for a very important issue. And Deputy, when I was Minister for Education in 1998, I took a decision, brought a memorandum to Cabinet, providing for the employment of SNAs for the first time in mainstream schools. It was a watershed decision at the time, and I can recall how dubious finance officials were at my protestations that this would be a modest measure, which were sort of dashed a year later when it was more than double the estimate I had helpfully provided to finance officials. And today we have 21,000 SNAs, and I don't mean that, it's an important point, but I will say to the finance officials they were right because they saw what was coming, and it was a good thing. And it has changed over the years, and it would have to, and has modernised and has professionalised, and it's now a career pathway, but it's essential for special needs children, and it has allowed a radical change in special education so far as the vast majority of children with special needs are in mainstream education, be it in special classes or be it in a mainstream class. And also, of course, SNAs operate very effectively in special schools as well. And I think you've raised a very important point. And what I would say that special needs assistants is entitled to full salary for the first 21 days while on health and safety leave. And based on an SNA's PRSI contributions, they may be entitled to health and safety benefit from the Department of Social Protection where their health and safety leave extends beyond 21 days. Now, the Board of Management has a fundamental role here. It's obliged to assess any specific risk in the workplace to that special needs assistant and to ensure that the special needs assistant is not exposed to any process or working conditions that will damage either the safety or health of the pregnant special needs assistant and or that of the developing child. And I understand in certain contexts within special education that can arise. But where a risk has been identified and it's not possible to remove the risk, protective and preventive measures should be taken to safeguard the health of any special needs assistant to whom the provisions apply, such as a temporary adjustment in the working environment so that the exposure to the risk is avoided. Or in the event that such adjustment is not possible, by moving the special needs assistants to suitable alternative work which does not entail the risk, or in the event that such alternative work is not available and having consulted with and received certification from the Occupational Health Service, by granting the special needs assistant health and safety leave. Health and safety leave will cease when the special needs assistant concerned commences maternity leave or the risk itself ceases. Now, I know that in 2021, Fitzpatrick, I think, did submit a claim for increased health and safety leave for SNAs and couldn't at that stage be considered under the terms of building momentum. And I'm not clear whether that was referred to WRC or not. But there is a full review of the SNA contract currently being carried out by a working group on SNA recruitment as part of the work on the SNA Workforce Development Plan.
Deputy Fitzpatrick.
SNAs are given 21 days leave if they're deemed to be at risk in the working environment. I personally think, Taoiseach, that teachers and SNAs should be treated the same. I don't want to see any disparity between both. SNAs, as far as I'm concerned, is a vocation. As I said here, in my constituency office tomorrow morning, I know there'll be queues of people coming in and looking for facilities for the children. So when a child goes to school and getting full time looking after the SNA should be looked after. What do I go back and I tell this young mother? I came in and I spoke to the Taoiseach and I got no relief. If teachers, all they want to be done is to get the same respect as a teacher gets. As I said, to go back to school, do a bit of study in a moment. And as I said here, this young girl has been bitten, has been kicked, has been punched. And I know myself, and they come into my constituency office, and they've no complaints whatsoever. They're there to help the children and everything else. And all they're looking for is the same respect as the teachers are getting. So, Taoiseach, I'm asking you, whatever power you have whatsoever is, and as a former teacher and everything else, and you must realise the amount of good work that SNAs do, Please give me some kind of response. I can go back to these people who want to be SNAs.
Deputy.
And as I said earlier on, half the schools in the country cannot get enough SNAs. And if they feel it's going to not be looked after, Taoiseach, how are we going to get the right people to become SNAs? Thank you.
I was just saying towards, and I acknowledge the sincerity and with which you've approached this, and it's evidence of your diligence at constituency level that you do come across situations like this, and it's not the first case due to your kind of diligence on the ground that you articulate issues like this. But I did indicate that there's a full review of the SNA contract on the way as part of the SNA workforce development plan, and that working group will examine all aspects of the duties and responsibilities of the SNA and in terms of how they interact with the school community. And all of the stakeholders involved, management bodies, force of trade union, which represents SNAs, are in that working group. And it will also consider the challenges related to the role and make recommendations as to how they may be addressed. And there's also, just to say that a redeployment scheme for SNAs would be established in consultation and collaboration with stakeholders, which will initially be run on a pilot basis that may give opportunities in the future to deal with the issues that you've outlined. And I'll certainly engage again with the ministers on the basis of your advocacy, but there is work underway.
Now, finally, Deputy Matty McGrath, on behalf of the Rural Independent Group.
Well, Margaret, there are huge issues facing the once thriving market town of Clonmel, with huge levels of vacancy and dereliction. There are water outages on a weekly and sometimes daily basis, and there are very concerning levels of open drug taking and drug dealing on the main streets of our town. There is unfortunately a very unsavoury atmosphere that is felt in the town centre. I don't say this lightly. Clonmel is a great town, Vale of Honey, Clonmel. Clonmel is a fantastic town with serious help and support. It can recover, but it cannot recover through the neglect that it is currently receiving. Clonmel has a very strong community. It has a great business ethic, and business are doing their best, small business especially, to carry on in very difficult economic circumstances. It is a wonderful university hospital, third level institution, and great industries in Clonmel. But the town centre is struggling, and the people are struggling. And we have fabulous community initiatives, clubs and organisations, namely Bannock Clonmel, wonderful ambassadors. There has been a task force set up to tackle vacancy and dereliction, but we need a multi-agency action to tackle the many serious issues facing the town. Dereliction and vacancy are one element. Homelessness and mental health and difficulties. Drugs are unfortunately rampant in the town, and the Gardaí are unable to deal with the situation due to a chronic shortage of Garda numbers, chronic I say, and working out of a horrible Garda station which were waiting 50 years to be replaced. The demise of the town has worsened with the abolition of Clonmel Borough Council 10 years ago by Phil Hogan at the time. Before the abolition, Clonmel Borough Council had a discretionary current account spend of 20 million per year. The loss of that is 200 million in the last 10 years. And can anyone wonder why it's so badly neglected? We now have a budget of 142,000 discretionary annually in the town of Clonmel. This is shocking. At the same time, parking charges in Clonmel town are the highest in the country, and businesses struggle with the huge rates and rising costs of doing business. There are huge concerns about the general sense of wasting money in the town. And now we woke up this Monday to a car park, the Friary car park. We lost our friars after hundreds of years earlier in the year, and the car park is now to be turned into an area for concerts and for arts. That would be needed. That was consultation about that during COVID when outdoor spaces were needed. But now we have a plaza which up to 10 million was spent on, and the site of the old Kicken Barracks. So we don't need this new venue in the town, taking away badly needed parking spaces, 30, right beside the main street and Mitchell Street. And furthermore, we've lost 14 spaces with the demolition of Clonmel Arms, which had to be demolished because it was in disrepair. 14 spaces have gone there from the centre of town. So the businesses in the town are aghast at how money can be spent on vanity projects and projects like this that are not necessary. And they can't be allowed. We're literally closing them down by stealth, by not allowing them have people to go into park, and they're getting no supports and token rates supports and that, but they just want to be left trade, allow the people to come in and do business with them.
All right.
Thank you, Deputy, for raising the issue, and I know that you and many public representatives are strong advocates of Clonmel. Indeed, Councillor Siobhan Ambrose is very regularly on to me in relation to the well-being of Clonmel. It's a town, it's a lovely town, and I like Clonmel, and has huge potential and has grown and expanded significantly over the last 2 decades, and there has been significant investment in the town as well. And I appreciate you acknowledging the investment in the University Hospital. As far back as my time as Minister for Health, we invested very significantly in Clonmel University Hospital. And I think there's a challenge, and we need to reflect. I mean, economically the country has expanded, population has grown. I think the nature of urban life is changing. In other words, I think the mix that went into towns in previous times may not be the mix for current times. I think there may be need for more substantial residential now in town centres than has been the norm or the history. And this applies to the cities as well as to towns. I agree with you. I oppose the abolition of town councils and borough councils. From a democracy point of view, was my big kind of position at the time. But also, I think from the idea of the community coming together, and to me, an urban council was the community coming together in an elected format, whose tenants were very sharp in terms of the needs of the town, and who came forward with cohesive plans. In my own county, I think of towns like Kinsale and Clonakilty, with good urban councils that transformed their experience. That's true across the country. So I accept your perspective on that. And there are great organisations and clubs in Clonmel. So there's a lot to go for Clonmel as well. There's lots of strengths. And recently Minister Butler opened Haven House, which crisis resolution supports for mental health. That was a cost of $4 million, that facility. And a new 50-bed community nursing unit is being built at a cost of $13 million and will be completed this year. And then there's a whole range of urban renewal and then the rural community development funds that are putting funds into towns across the length and breadth of the country, including Clonmel. On drug dealing and addiction generally, I think we have a challenge in the country, not just in Clonmel, and I think it's an area we need renewed focus on, and we need a multidisciplinary response to that issue. And I've read reports this morning, for example, with worrying new synthetic drugs coming onto the market, which could be very serious for the country. And I do think, if you see the fentanyl crisis in the United States and in Canada, quite shocking, we do need to be very focused on the potential, bad enough as it is, but the potential more or worsening situation that could emerge in the current time.
Deputy McGrath.
Things happening in Clonmel and those issues, and we had great ambassadors like the late Frank Patterson, the late Meek Dell, and indeed we've Bennett Lurman are known all over the world. But Clonmel has lost its borough council under Fine Gael. It's lost its Kickham Barracks, which is a major blow. It's lost our mental health services in St. Michael's. And what we want, then the biggest loss of all was the takeover of the power base from Clonmel to Nina. Nina is mostly with investments. I don't begrudge the people of Nina, but we lost completely in amalgamation. And the county manager was even appointed before the legislation was passed here. And that's dubious in itself. So the power base has shifted all the investment in Nina. And now we have the lowest charges in Nina, parking charges, and the money collected in Clonmel ironically goes into North Tipperary. So the people of Clonmel have had enough. and they want a fair play. And we'd find public officials, many of them retired at the time because of the takeover, and it was a takeover. And Councillor Niall Denny at the time, I helped him to go and took a High Court challenge to that abolition, but he had no support from any political parties or others, and he's still fighting the battle over the discrepancies that were there over how that happened, how the power shifted, and how the county manager was appointed, the North Tipperary county manager was appointed before ever the legislation was passed here. There are serious questions there. I've asked the Housing Committee to examine it, but we need a fair play. It's fine play to me, and Clonmel needs fair play, and we're not getting it.
It's pertaining to the appointment of any county manager. I don't think it's appropriate that we could cast aspersions on that, and that was quite some time ago, I'd say now. So, I didn't pick up the vanity project that you referenced earlier. I think is it the transformation of a car park into a venue? Is it? Yeah. No, I don't know what.
It's not needed.
I don't know what the broader view in Clonmel is on that. So I'm not going to comment specifically on that. On the Borough Council, and I don't want to be mischievous or anything like that at this point in time. And Count Quayle is looking at me very sharply, but I think it was the Labour Party policy at the time.
They've apologised for it.
That came forward with the idea.
They've apologised for it.
And they have changed.
Why don't you bring it back?
Later, I think it was Deputy Howland at the time when he was Minister.
He apologised
possessed with the idea of urban councils.
Why don't you bring him back?
It's very hard to bring something back that's been abolished, but we shouldn't rule it out. We should not rule it out. And like, as you know, there was a compromise eventually in the form of the municipal sort of groups that have been established, and they have begun to, I think, assert themselves in respect of a district. But it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing in terms of a town. And I also believe in democracy, so I believe in where people should have the right to elect people to manage and plan the future of their town in a visionary way.
That concludes leaders' questions for today. We move now to questions on policy and legislation. Deputy Pearse Doherty, 1 minute, please.
Taoiseach, mortgage holders are facing interest rates of over 7%, some of them with households paying thousands of euro more in interest to the banks and to the vulture funds. And for over a year now, Sinn Féin called for the introduction of mortgage interest relief to support them. The mortgage interest tax credit that the government introduced is simply not working. Out of the 700,000 mortgage holders in the state, less than 15,000 households have received the credit. 90% of the money allocated hasn't been drawn down so far, and hundreds of families have been rejected from this support because their incomes are too low. I spoke to a single mother with 2 children whose application was rejected by Revenue because her income was too low. Her mortgage cost, Taoiseach, has risen by €5,500 in the space of a year. Minister Donoghue and Minister Humphreys promised that such families would be able to access support through the Department of Social Protection. But when this single mother contacted the Department of Social Protection, she was basically told to go to MABS. This is simply unacceptable. I asked you earlier on where the 50,000 affordable houses were that you promised the electorate 4 years ago. You weren't able to answer that. Maybe you can answer. Where is the scheme that the 2 ministers in your government promised that nobody can find that's supposed to help mortgage holders that don't have an income?
Taoiseach, please.
Well, as you know, Budget 24 did introduce a series of cost of living measures, including income tax, energy credits, increases social protection payments, as well as an increase in terms of a 200 million in the bank levy, and also provided for a mortgage interest relief measure to help some borrowers with the increase in interest rates. And that did take place, and then we had the it didn't cover every situation, but it has provided some relief, and the Minister for Finance was very anxious to bring that in. I also welcome the announcement this week by PTSB that the bank is cutting mortgage interest rates for new and existing customers by up to 0.05%. And these rate reductions mark the 3rd set of cuts to fixed rate mortgages that PTSB has announced since December. And markets expect the ECB to cut policy interest rates several times this year, with the first cut.
What's the point of me turning up here? What's the point of turning up if you're not going to answer the question?
Our cost of living measures.
I'm asking about Department of Social Protection.
Just let me be clear
What's
now
the point?
on something. I have no power or authority to direct the Taoiseach to give you any particular answer, or any other member for that matter. So the question has been posed. Taoiseach has given you an answer. That's the end of it. Deputy Aodhan, please.
Taoiseach, I want to raise again the issue of the DESH Plus proposal. Now, the DESH Plus proposal comes from a number of principals in Ballymun and Tala and Dublin 17 in my own constituency who are suggesting that we need extra trauma-based supports for the most acutely disadvantaged schools in the country. About 100 schools have been identified nationwide. Now, I know government always say to me, or often say to me, that not every child goes to a disadvantaged child goes to a DESH school, and that's fine and that's correct. However, these are the most profoundly disadvantaged children in the most profoundly disadvantaged schools. And the Minister for Education has said that there's an OECD review into the entire DESH scheme, and she's waiting for that. But can I get some kind of a commitment from you, Taoiseach, as somebody with a background in education you've already alluded to? Can we again, front-load supports for these most disadvantaged children who are already disadvantaged, as we know, before COVID? COVID has had a profoundly damaging effect, negative effect on them and their communities. And if we could just prioritise this as an education priority, it would mean a huge amount to these children and to those schools.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy. And I know your long-term commitment as well to this area. And I've looked at the North East, the area where you have a multidisciplinary team of psychologists, occupational therapists, speech and language across about 10 primary schools. I'm a passionate believer in multidisciplinary teams in education. And things have happened over the last decade which in my view have gone against that in terms of the progressing disability. But in any event, and I think so I will talk to the Minister in respect, if particularly children who have been subject to significant background trauma and help, they need a variety of inputs and supports. So I will raise that with the Minister and revert.
Minister. Deputy Gannon.
Taoiseach, the hanging posters, knocking at doors. We have a very intimate relationship with our electorate as part of our democracy. And over the last couple of weeks, I've watched local election candidates who simply want to hang those posters, knock at doors, receive a level of vitriol that I haven't witnessed during my time in politics. And it is having a chilling effect. In my own constituency, I've seen 2 women, one in my own party's team, being threatened with a box plate to take down the posters. Another local election candidate yesterday was physically abused. Can Corley, I welcome your safe participation in public life report that you launched yesterday. But Taoiseach, I simply want to ask that you are aware of this increasing danger, particularly for those of our candidates who are simply want to knock at doors, simply want to engage in the democratic process. It's becoming an increasing threat, Taoiseach, and I just want to know that you're aware of it, that there prospectively is actions to be followed.
Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you.
I am very much aware of it, Deputy, and indeed I heard the Count Corlett this morning on Morning Ireland, I think very articulately and trenchantly putting the case and saying that society as a whole must address this issue in the interests of democracy. And some of the cases we've heard about and read about recently are shocking, and I think that the very negative misogynistic focus in particular is a worry, and for women who wish to get into politics, this is a significant deterrent in itself. I just also want to make, and in no way, understating the significance of what you're saying, we should also say the vast majority of people are courteous, are warm and hospitable. And I was in Virginia and Cavan last night with Philip Brady and Nathan, and we had a very warm reception and engagement. No, they may not all agree with what we
that's always the case.
Articulate. No, I just want to say it because we need to sort of. It's very difficult here because I'm passionate about democracy, and I don't want people saying you can't knock on doors. You can.
All right.
But I think we do need to address it, and I would think maybe we collectively in the House we should look at supports we can provide to public representatives in terms of protection, particularly at their homes.
Okay, we're over time, Taoiseach. Sorry, we can't go into the detail of it. Deputy Gino Kenny.
Thanks.
Or sorry,
you're grand.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ciarán Corla. Taoiseach, what will it take for the government to recognise that inviting in big tech to set up as many data centres as they want, to use huge amounts of electricity and water, is simply not a sustainable policy? You're now being warned by the officials, government officials in the Department of Enterprise, that this is not sustainable, that the data centre boom is using up, this is Colin McCarthy, the data centre boom is using up the entire bonus to emission reductions that would otherwise be underway as wind and solar renewables are deployed. The Minister has been warned that there will not be enough renewable energy to meet demand from data centres. We have more data centres per capita than anywhere else in the world. We're at 82 currently. We're going to head towards over 100. They provide very few jobs and use up a fifth of all our electricity. If we continue to adding more and more electricity demand in the form of these data centres, we will not achieve shifting to renewable energy. When are you going to recognise this?
I think in terms of just focusing on one aspect of this challenge, I think we should focus on the broader picture, which is there are two fundamental challenges, digitalisation and decarbonisation, which we must try and reconcile. Because whether we like it or not, data centres are a necessary infrastructure for many of the services which we now take for granted, including technological advances such as cloud computing, quantum computing and AI, and the rapid growth of the use of internet services by both enterprises, consumers and political parties, by the way, who are more and more driven by data and data analytics and so forth. But we do have to do it within the context of the climate challenge. And that means that, in terms of the construction of data centres, that there's a very strong focus on energy usage.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
Corporate purchase power agreements, on-site renewables, demand flexibility, battery storage, other sustainable solutions to reduce the burden on the grid.
Thank you. The Regional Group Deputy Fitzpatrick.
Taoiseach, based on the recommendation of the report of the Child Maintenance Review Group, child maintenance payments were due to be disregarded from the means test for social welfare payments from the 1st of May under the Social Welfare, Liability-Related and Child Maintenance Bill 2023. This means that many lone parents on reduced rates of payments will see their payments increase and others will qualify for a payment. However, one of my constituents recently contacted me regarding this, and she still be means tested. On querying this with our local welfare office, they advised her that they have not got any word from the department to change the payment. Although this landmark new initiative, which will benefit over 16,000 lone parents, this change is overdue. And I don't know, Taoiseach, can you investigate the situation? How this is still being involved in means tests? Thank you.
Thank you again, Deputy. There's another example of your detailed issues that you bring, and I will follow it up, and I'll talk to the Minister in relation to the status of that recommendation, and I will revert back to you.
Going back to Clonmel again, and this is the situation with water. We're in a very perilous situation, as I said earlier. We've outages on a daily, definitely on a weekly basis. Business have no certainty, householders. We have a lovely supply in Power of Anouk in the mountain road in Clonmel, river supply from the mountain, which Irish Water are hell-bent on disconnecting and decommissioning that reservoir. They won't listen to their caretakers. I want to salute Eugene Jargon and his colleagues, and indeed the plumbers who are on the county council payroll but are contracted to fix the water repairs, and some private contractors. We have a huge problem. Clonairy is a wonderful supply, but we also have Pellerano, which supplies the centre of the town. And Irish Water won't listen to anyone. Minister O'Brien told me here that he's written to them and asked them. They won't listen to the public representatives, they won't listen to the business people, they won't talk or engage. And they don't know what system, and they do more interference in the system when they go at it rather than fixing it. And they won't listen to the people who have the knowledge, the council staff, some retired and some existing, who know the situation. We need this resolved. We need Irish Water to listen to the people.
First of all, Deputy, I don't have the specifics of the case that you raised in respect of the water supply issues within Clonmel, but Irish Water, my understanding, hold clinics for deputies or engage with local public representatives. But I will investigate the matter, or will ask the minister, talk to the minister, and get an update in relation to the issues that you raised.
Deputy Thomas Springle. Yeah.
On the 28th of November 2022, Judge Geoffrey Shannon informed survivors of child sexual abuse that he had submitted his report to the board of the St John Ambulance Ireland. In February, I raised the fact that it had been nearly a year since the publication of the damning report, but that survivors were still waiting on St John Ambulance to implement Geoffrey Shannon's recommendations. Today, survivors are still waiting on these recommendations to be implemented. It's completely unacceptable that this has been allowed to continue. Survivors have already been through so much. They had to fight to ensure that the report was carried out in the first place, and then they had to fight to ensure it was published. It is disgraceful to force survivors to fight even further to ensure that recommendations are implemented. And the Minister for Children retains oversight of the report and the implementation of the report, so there is a role for government in this. So will your government ensure that the recommendations of the Shannon report into the management of historical child sexual abuse within St John's Ambulance is implemented?
Thank you.
For children in relation to this very serious issue, and I would be somewhat surprised if the recommendations were not being followed through. So I will get a report back from the Department of Children in respect of this and forward it to you.
Deputy Kieran Cannon.
I got that. Taoiseach, 72 people have lost their lives on Irish roads so far this year. That's more than 3 people every week who have not arrived home safely to their families. This is a crisis, Taoiseach. If we were losing 3 people a week on our road or our rail or bus network, they would be shut down immediately until we could investigate why that was happening. We have a road safety authority that hasn't shared crash location data for 8 years. We have traffic light cameras that are working and we switched them off. We have just 2 average speed camera systems in operation across the whole country. We've asked the Gardaí to do 1/2 an hour of road safety enforcement every day, when at the same time we have hundreds of citizens who have nowhere to upload footage of such violations. The Minister with responsibility is working really hard on this, Taoiseach, but he has to engage with the Road Safety Authority, the Gardaí, 2 government departments, Transport Infrastructure Ireland. The question I'm asking is, Taoiseach, will you and your colleagues in government please consider the appointment of a Road Safety Commissioner with the resources, the powers and the singular focus of saving lives on Irish roads?
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Look, I fundamentally agree that we've all been shocked by the recent loss of life on our roads and concerned by the worrying increase in road fatalities after many years of progress in making our roads safer. And, I've always paid great credit to Minister Noel Dempsey, who took on a lot of opposition in the House when he brought in some fundamental measures recommended by the Road Safety Authority, which did then ultimately lead to a substantial decline in road fatalities and injuries. And among that, the whole drink driving law phenomenon. People may look surprised, but at the time there was a lot of opposition to all of that. And so people are very taken back post-COVID when there's been an increase in road fatalities and injuries. And what I would say, Deputy, is I would like to understand first your proposal in terms of Road Safety Commissioner vis-à-vis the Road Safety Authority and the relationship between the two before I would commit to it. But I'm willing to,
you might correspond with each other.